by one of the film's stars, Connor Rowe. I guess we have to start probably by the question that's on everyone's mind. Did you make it up to your friend for missing the stack dough, or?
Should I just talk loudly? Oh, here we go. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So thankfully we managed to get back in time for the wedding, and actually 3 of us were involved in it, and we were very insistent. We were back in the UK on the Friday, ready for the wedding on the Saturday, which was amazing to be there for, which was absolutely brilliant.
Can I just ask, does anyone, do we need to translate into French, or is English okay?
No.
If you do need French translation, like just raise your hand. Ouais? Non?
Ok.
On peut pas essayer en français si vous voulez.
Oh, right.
Well, I mean, you're keeping on with the same idea. You're in probably the most terrifying shot of the entire film. And over the image, there's you talking and saying that something like, I wrote it down, the panic is death. And they talk about the night, this would be somebody's nightmare. And so I want to open the question to both of you. What's it like to pursue that? I mean, the film obviously does what it can, but what's the actual feeling in the pit of your stomach when you're in such a moment like that?
Wow, that's a great question. So for me, actually, cave diving is it's yoga, right? It's that.
This is a first.
Yeah.
Let's hear
Yeah.
this.
So it's actually really relaxing, ironically, because you go underwater in these environments and nothing else matters. You are solely focused on what you're trying to do there. And if it all starts to go horribly wrong, which it does happen sometimes, it's like, okay, that's cool. What'll be will be. I will do everything in my power to deal with this problem. And that was like a mindset that transferred so well into what we were doing in the rescue, in that, I will do everything in my power to deal with the problem in front of me, and I will deal with the consequences later.
And what is it like for you as a filmmaker to engage with that?
Well, I could just say personally, the thing I feared most was childbirth, and when it was happening, it just had to happen. There was no turning around. No, I mean, as a filmmaker, no, we're just trying to be respectful and trying to listen as closely as possible. And, I've dove probably more than most people in my life because my father's a big diver, and I would never go into a cave. It sounds too scary. But I just think that, it's from a place of respect to try to listen to why that's so meaningful for you. The yoga metaphor is a new one for me, because normally when I'm doing yoga and I'm upset, I just go into the prone position. But yeah, so it's just about a place of respect and listening as close as we can.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up childbirth, because in a previous interview, when somebody asked what you felt when you responded to the story as it was happening in the news, you talked about responding to it as a parent. That it hit some sort of sense in your brain of a parental concern. It was on a podcast that you did the research, and I was wondering what's it like? Did that inform any artistic choice in the film in terms of your initial response was to respond to the story as a parent, and did that help shape your role as a storyteller when creating the narrative or sort of crafting the narrative?
Well, I think all of us responded in a very this story was so much followed throughout the world, probably because of its humanity. So I say as a parent because, yes, I have 2 Asian kids. It's not that I have a partner in life who's an extreme athlete. So would he do that for somebody else's kids? It was kind of the thought in my head. But yeah, of course, and I think it just really best manifests itself in terms of, what I was really moved by when I was watching this rescue was the sheer moral courage of these divers, where I think Dr. Harris is the best example, where he would never practice medicine again, period, if one of those children died. Who would let the guy who killed the kid anesthetize them? 1. 2, he's a father of 3. How do you even look at your own kids after you killed someone else's kid? And yet, they really believed saving 1 child was a success. And taking that chance and trying to save 1 was better than walking away and leaving 13 to die. And so it was that sheer moral courage, this idea of can you do your best? Can you be your best self? Can you do the right thing? Can you be generous? That just really always stayed with me. So yes, as a parent, like what would I do for someone else's child? What would someone else do for my child? Of course, you can't help but think about it, but I don't think it really has to be as a parent. Like I think the same way about my best friend or about my parents. Like, you know, what are the lengths we're willing to do to be good humans?
And as a filmmaker, it does continue some of the thematic investigations you've been working on and working towards in your past few films. Notably, just finding extreme clarity in the most death-defying situations, in the most bizarrely Byzantine situations that almost nobody would want to find themselves in. You find the people that do find themselves in those situations, and kind of examine the enormous clarity that it creates. And as somebody who was in that situation, and as somebody who sort of depicted that situation in 3 films now, what was it like, and what is it the appeal as an artist?
I feel like you just named our new company, like Byzantine Films. Like amazing. I mean, that's a really good idea. So this is my 8th film, and I think really at the end of the day, it comes just down to character, and you know, that examination of when people live a very intentional life, which is true of Meru, Free Solo, and here in The Rescue. Like there's something, like this is a passion, like you've dedicated, you know, hours and hours, weekends and weekends, but what's different about The Rescue is that you're volunteers. You know, everyone else has a day job, like they have, you know, Rick's a retired fireman, John is an IT consultant. So this was like the strange passion for a very esoteric minority sport that ended up becoming a calling, because it actually, like in Rick's case, it turns into 40 years of preparing for this one moment where he could do immense good for 13 individuals. But in terms of me, like I think the extremes bring out, it like kind of, it's like forces a kind of like the tip of the spear, like the tip of the knife sort of thing, in terms of where people have to make great decisions that are very character revealing. At the same time, like, I don't know, I wouldn't think about our films as being extreme. I think they're all looking at characters, and for this was like, how do ordinary people become these extraordinary individuals who can make the most generous decisions possible? And then the converse, like, why can't every other person make those extraordinary decisions to be like the most decent person possible?
What do you think, Connor?
Answer this, you got it. Nobel Peace Prize.
If you can use the word Byzantine in there too, you know.
Yeah. Byzantine.
Like, so you talked about, like, you know, it being a hobby, and it's what I use my spare time for, right? It's my evenings, my weekends, my holidays, a vast proportion of my income. Don't tell my wife. You know,
She knows.
She does.
She doesn't.
But you know, it's the opportunity to be involved in not only local rescue teams, but in this rescue, which has become such a huge part of my life now. You know, I kind of naively thought I'd come home and just crack on with life. I got that wrong pretty badly, I think. But to kind of give back to the community is such a great opportunity. Caving's a really niche thing where cavers tend to rescue fellow cavers. And so actually, you know, to be able to go and help at this level was just, you know, why wouldn't you, was the question. Why not, right? Why wouldn't you be going and helping and contributing towards this situation? Even if you could make one small difference, is that not a massive win, in my opinion? And that's why, you know, when the shout came for me, I was like, yeah, no problem. When am I flying? What am I doing? What kit do I need? Let's go. Let's do this and do it to the very best we possibly can, and bring those children back to their parents, right? That was fundamentally the whole point of what we were trying to do.
In terms of like lifting the veil on movie magic, there's a number of recreations, and there's a number of found footage. And what's the ratio between found footage, and what's the ratio between recreations? And what was it like to recreate those events from a soundstage in England? Is that right? In London?
Well, generally I prefer not to kiss and tell.
It's supposed to be funny.
So the reenactments are not, like, I don't really call them reenactments. So basically this, like, in nonfiction, the challenges or the obstacles define kind of the innovation. In fiction, like in a Hollywood movie, you can write a new scene to solve a problem. In nonfiction, I consider myself a journalist, and you're bound by the truth, and you're like, you've got a problem, and you have to find a way around. And kind of this film, like the more extreme the problem, the kind of more horrible the question is, or like the more horrible the task is. At the same time, it's kind of fun, because that's what we do. And so in this case, not only were we not there for the principal, you know, action, two, there was like there was about 40 seconds of known footage from inside the cave, so there was no footage. So you have a great story, no footage. So reenactments were always kind of a reality. Like if you're going to possibly try to illustrate the story, what are you going to watch? It'd be reenactments or animation, and animation didn't seem like an option. And then you add to this like 10 really surly divers who are like really not interested in like acting. If you even say, like, we have like a British American thing going on where I'm like, reenactment is the better word, and they're like recreation because it doesn't say act. And I was like, no. Like think about like the Civil War reenactments. Those are people trying to do the same thing again. And they're like, no, but it says act. And I was like, no, okay, well, we've got an issue here. So I call them more demonstrations where we were it was the middle of the pandemic, it's October 2020, and we went to England because most of the divers were in England. And we were in a tank at Pinewood where James Bond is being shot in another tank, much bigger tank.
Name checked in the movie, by the way.
Yes, totally organically. I'm sure they're really conscious of us right now. They're like, that film.
No time to dive.
No time to die. And the guys, they demonstrated what they did. And I have to say, like, not only did it solve a narrative problem in terms of providing us some visual imagery for it, but, you know, just as a filmmaker, I can conceptually understand a lot of things. I promise you, like, I'm working really hard to understand something, try to see something through your eyes. At the same time, like, we use real Thai children who are actors on the tank. And when you watch someone bind a kid's hands behind their back, bind their feet together, and push their head underwater, that's when the sheer weight of the responsibility you guys were willing to take on hit me. And, like, I remember the first time I saw it, I began crying. And, like, Jimmy's like, get yourself together. I was like, but I can't. Like, it was just... You know, and also, like, when they all showed up with their real equipment, and, like, you know, Rick Stanton, he showed up, like, there are rips in his wetsuit, there's duct tape, there's mud, probably still from Thailand on it. I was like, no wonder the military had problems with accepting you. You know, so it's just, the reenactments were about demonstrations. And then, but to answer your question, like, we had kind of embarked on this path with reenactments, and we, at the same time, in parallel, we'd always understood that maybe the Thai Navy SEALs had filmed. And it's a great story where basically the Admiral of the Thai Navy SEALs is married to a very strong-willed woman who is a journalist. And the Admiral's wife is the only person in the world who could have access to that cave. And I thought it was gonna be, so anyway, so we negotiated with them over Zoom for 2 years to no avail. They said no in every way possible. And do you guys want me to speak slower? Because I'm speaking in English for you.
That's okay.
And then it was only when I got my second vaccine I went to Thailand.
When was that?
May 2021.
So just to
The film was
interject, like, what was it like to actually see the cave that existed only as a kind of a image, like a mythic image that you had been working on? What was it like to finally step foot into this place that it took up so much mental and artistic real estate for 2 years of your life?
It was less about the mental and artistic real estate. It was more about, like, this is May. The kids got trapped in July. Am I really going to go into this cave? Like, I mean, it's like the worst type of news story. Like, a filmmaker making film about trapped children gets trapped. Divers are called back. Would you have come?
We would have come back.
I mean, Rick
Don't give away the sequel idea.
No, I WhatsApped him and I was like, I'm going to do this. But the only way they got me to do it was by telling me that none of the other directors of other films had done it. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll go in. And it was amazing. You know, very simply, like, I understood instantly after 2 minutes why those children were in there. It is enchanting. It is a great adventure. It's a great, like, you know, if I had a cave in my backyard, I would go in. You know, it's kind of like your last swim of the summer, your last ski run of the season. You know, they know the monsoons are coming, so let's have our last adventure because it's really hot outside, and this is an amazing thing to be able to do. That said, I also, when walking that cave, I was like, this is fucking impossible. Like, no, like, when you actually see it, the scale makes it so that you're like, this is actually, like, this shouldn't have been possible. And also, that's why you needed thousands of people supporting 10 individuals. Because just like, I mean, just to go from chamber 3 where the divers emerged to chamber 1, it took 45 minutes of 200 people hand passing a child. You know, and it's perilous. Like, I mean, it's like there are places where you have to go on your stomach and you can't turn around until you get to the other side. You know, and it's like what we call in climbing no-fall zones, like all over the place. So just my main thing was like, I don't understand how anyone could do it.
Well, there's a line in the film that I wrote down that says, "What does the impossible look like?" And that seems like it might have been something that could encapsulate the entire experience of it.
Yeah, you know, building on a little bit what Chai just said there about it being a massive team effort, you know, it's difficult to fathom in your head the number of people involved in this, you know, not just on site in the cave, but also back here in the UK and in other countries as well. You know,
Or in France.
or you know, yeah, everywhere. You know, for example, Josh got driven from the airport to his house and back again. You know, people had to give up their time and do that, right? You know, so you know, you're pulling together so many people to achieve something, and everyone's going, okay, what does that look like? How are we going to achieve this goal? You know, how are we going to get there? Let's figure it out and break it down step by step by step, and give it absolutely everything we possibly can to ensure the success and bring these kids out and reunite them with their parents, which was ultimately the goal.
I think we could open up the floor to questions if anybody has a question. Does anybody have a question?
Or you go drink.
Oh, we can go drink.
Any questions? Yes.
I was just curious in regards to the reenactment scenes. For yourself and for the child actors and everything, it was just a kind of a build-up to film the scenes. But for the divers, I was curious to know, even though there is a happy ending to it, did you guys, like, how did you feel about recreating those scenes emotionally?
So I kind of, for myself, and when I spoke to some of the others as well, you know, one of the things that was really important when we were doing these was to make sure they were as accurate as possible to what we did. So we made sure we had exactly the same equipment and we did everything exactly the same. And for me, it was two different things. I tried to like separate them in my mind a little bit and be like, okay, that was Thailand, that was unpleasant. This is, you know, trying to show the world what we did and share this story as best we possibly can with everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody want a drink?
Okay, let me tell you, I'm going to share an anecdote. So, did everyone notice the monk who's in the film?
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking about the challenges of this film. So this is like kind of my most absurd and like the craziest and my favorite challenge was, so I was like, this monk played a great role in this rescue, and I just would love to hear what he actually has to say about it. And so I'm pursuing this, and then I'm told that actually, after the children were successfully rescued, he took an oath of silence for 3 years and went into a cave in Myanmar. Period.
Wow.
And I was like, because we had encountered this before with Sadhus like in the Himalaya, and I was like, I'll send in a whiteboard, and they're like, absolutely not. It's COVID, no, it's not happening. I was like, but please can I send in a whiteboard? So then the 3-year anniversary of the rescue was this summer, and shortly thereafter I received a box in the mail, and inside were 1,000 blessed bracelets from Karom Bunchum. I've never met this man, we've never spoken, but it's just like one of those kind of crazy things that are around the story, where like, you know, like, I can't interview you, but then, and I mean the whole thing, it was just one of kind of like my favorite obstacles, and also the most frustrating. Anyway, let's go have a drink, and we'll be around to talk if you want to.
But thank you very much.